Year before last, more military people killed themselves than were killed in action.
I heard that statistic.
Yeah, and I think that's happening with the military people too. I ran into a guy at a Braves game, and I recognized something was wrong, and was talking to him for quite some time. He was a pilot, and we're flying all these government officials, and the helicopter in front of him with his best buddy got shot down. Some officials were killed, and this guy just lost it. He's been in combat and lots of other things. I could tell he was having treatment there in Atlanta.
Okay.
And he was there at the Braves game by himself, and he was manic. He was messed up. But he was getting treatment there. You know, they don't have anybody.
Yeah.
They're in this world, and they're looking for people like me that would sit there and talk to them for a while.
Wow.
He's experiencing this, and he doesn't have a safety net, okay? He's there by himself, and I was like, holy moly, you got way too much to drink. I almost wanted to just make sure he got home, you know? But
I know.
I couldn't really take that on. I just see people like that.
My sister and I know so many people that are being affected by bipolar. Could you start there?
And I'm by no means an expert on this, okay? I have a 4-year business degree with a minor in English, and I have a background in talking to people. I've spent a lot of time dealing with people in different situations and different trauma, like almost everything that you can imagine. I've seen people in traumatized conditions, which, in my estimation, mirrors PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, I think most people snap out of it pretty quickly, depending on what the trauma is. But that doesn't mean that the trauma doesn't come back and haunt them later on. We process things. We're in an emergency, and we're watching what's going on. We're not seeing everything, and we don't know all the facts. So we're going to perceive it from our point of view. Now, the premise is the processing is not correct, and we assume some things that maybe we don't need to. That is what de-stressing is about. When you have a debriefing in the military, that's what that's about. The details from lots of other people that were there, and you're able to ask questions about things, and allows you to go from there less likely to assume responsibilities for things that maybe that you shouldn't be assuming responsibility for. Because you're going to cut it to pieces. I should have done this, I should have done that if somebody dies. See? It's how you process it. Now, we also have...
Okay, just so I can keep it in context, because you talked about the military. Were you in the military?
No, I wasn't, but I was in a paramilitary profession.
Okay.
I was a professional firefighter for 26 years.
Okay.
And I retired under duress. The PTSD just got too bad. And the pressures, as I rose up through the rank, and all the things that I saw. The fire department is a paramilitary organization. It's not as strict, as the military. But they have the same military structure. Now, we also have things happen in our life we didn't consider necessarily be traumatic, but they were. Life-changing events. It's usually a death or something where you lose control of the situation and something happens, you have no control over it. Now, you're going to react 2 different ways. A person is either going to jump in there and try and do something about it and get out of the situation, or they're going to cower in a ball. Most people will do one or the other. Most people probably don't do anything at all. There was a study done of these kids that were trapped in this bus. These people had taken these kids hostage in a bus, and they took it and buried it, okay?
Wow.
And then asked for a ransom for these kids. I want to say it was sometime in the 70s. What it allowed was a study. Some of the kids were teenagers. Some of the kids huddled in the corner and couldn't get out. And, we're just going to sit there.
Right.
And some of them decided to dig out. And what they did was they kept digging, and at one point it collapsed, and a bunch of the sand or whatever dirt came back in. They all thought they were going to die, and they got upset with the ones that kept trying to dig out. Mm-hmm. And they wound up digging themselves out, and they were rescued. And what they did was they talked to all these kids, and they were able to do this because it was a controlled situation. They could use it for a study. And what they found out But, all of them had suffered the traumas, the same traumas of being kidnapped and I'm buried alive. The ones that fared better were the ones that were able to do something about it. They were digging themselves out. Those kids were better off. The ones that huddled in the corner continued to have problems. It's the way they processed it, too. It's very dynamic when you're talking about trauma. I did a lot of research when I was committed. I was committed 4 years ago and diagnosed bipolar. I actually was placed on medication and had several different ones. None of them worked for me. I was actually allergic to it. I developed something called dyskinesia. It was initiated by taking that medication. There are all kinds of side effects from that medication. I couldn't balance. Eventually, I got to where I couldn't raise my arms up from my side. My left arm I couldn't even raise from my side of my body. When the doctor saw that, boy, he freaked out. They're going to take you off of that because you could have had a stroke from it. I was also on Abilify, which is another thing that they like to group with mood stabilizers. It's supposed to help some people. With me, it made it even worse. So I'm actually allergic to mood stabilizers. I think there are a lot of people that are. The problem is you get diagnosed because of how you're presenting when they see you. This is generally, it's somebody that's never seen you before. So, especially the psychiatrist, she's just looking at how you're displaying. And his job at that point really is just to get a diagnosis and get a handle on the situation.
Yeah.
When you go in for treatment, they can't have 25 or 30 people running around screaming, okay? So they medicate the hell out of everybody. So that's part of it, I'm sure. The problem is then you can't deal with what you're doing. It just kind of postpones it.
You're right.
You're trying to figure it out. And whatever your Achilles heel is, that's what gets you. And your Achilles heel is going to be different than what mine is. Just like in PTSD, you can have 8 people have the same experience. When 2 of them, it's going to seriously bother. That's just the way it is.
If you're not comfortable with anything that I ask you, that's cool. But can you talk about what happened, what led up to you being committed, and can you talk about what do you mean when you say that?
I have been having problems for quite some time. I started out as a firefighter in the 80s under the Affirmative Action Act. They were hiring blacks and other people of color, and they were giving women non-traditional jobs. So there was a movement around the country. I was the only woman for 8.5 years.
Wow.
And the harassment was not that bad until I moved up in rank. Each time I moved up in rank, it became worse, okay, and I got less support. Now, that's not to say I didn't have some great guys. The majority of guys were fantastic.
Yeah.
But I had other people that had made it their mission to continually harass me because they didn't want me there and undermine me on my authority, which makes it very difficult to operate.
Yeah.
Now, if you're leading and you have people that don't want to follow you, won't follow you, that's the problem. Any job, there's a whole lot of things that are bad. The short and skinny of it really is just, I was burnt out. I retired essentially under duress. It was just too much. My concentration was bad.
Okay.
And you cannot have that. I was in a command position, directing things out in the field and responsible for lots of people. I had never gotten anybody killed. But when your concentration goes, you really don't need to be doing a job like that because you got to take so many things in your head.
Yeah.
And you want to know that you're making good decisions. So I said, it's just time to go. I had moved my mother here. My stepfather had passed away, and I moved her closer to me. And I also had my sister here. And so I thought I would spend time with them. Finally I got my family here. Work won't be so important. I'll spend time with them. It was getting treatment with this lady, or DMSR, which is a treatment where it's sort of a hypnotism. You go through a traumatic experience, and then the idea is that you reprocess that. Like I was talking about before.
Right.
The REM sleep and dreaming, you reprocess that incident and then it doesn't hurt anymore. And it also corrects other things. Because when you make a premise from an experience, okay, and you accept the responsibility, sometimes you carry those things with you to other incidents in your life. What was happening was my library was being reorganized. It had this treatment, and it opened other doors, and I had to friend and my ex-wife. It's okay. I had been with her for 16 and a half years. 2 years later, my best friend and my ex-wife got together. Well, he was also my power of attorney. Okay? Because I didn't want my family to do this. Was just if I was incapacitated or died.
Right.
I wanted to finish my estate.
Right.
My best friend, he was a guy in the fire department that had worked under me, and I'd mentored him coming up. And we think a lot alike and everything. And, you know, they always said, well, you got a spare bed here, you know. I was only on antidepressant anyway.
Okay.
I was taking my medicine. And the other thing that they said was that I wasn't going to therapy, which was incorrect. So the whole thing was bogus. The point being, if you ever commit anybody, you better think what's going to happen to them afterwards. Because as soon as that happened, it changed everything. I lost the ability to earn money.
Yeah.
You know, I was a well-thought-of professional. I'm not the only person running around with PTSD that's been in emergency services. Once you're committed, you see, a lot of other things go into place. And it makes you extremely vulnerable because other people can come after you.
Yeah.
And that set into place another set about the last 4 years of me having a lot of problems with relationships and relatives of relations because they use it against me now, see. And people don't understand it's PTSD. It's something that was done to me. Somebody that's been raped or molested has PTSD. And it's generally something that's done to you. It's not something you did to somebody else or that you did illegally. It's just something that happened to you, and you have to find a way to deal with it. And once you've been into that manic stage and had essentially like a breakdown, you'll never be able to handle the stress that you did, and you don't want to, see.
Okay.
That's the point. It should be a clue to you that you know when you're getting too rattled. I call it rattled. You haven't had enough sleep. You've got too much going on. You don't feel like you can handle it. You're not getting help. That's when you've got to protect yourself. If you keep going, and people will literally suck you dry. What happened with my mother when she was sick, I was handling everything and I needed some help. And because my family thinks I'm crazy, they didn't want to help me. Now see, that doesn't make a bit of sense. I've got PTSD, and when I'm in a pressure situation, I can handle it really well, but when I need some help, I need some help. We all do, right?
Yeah.
You don't just stand there and say, oh, okay, well, you're not going to get me help.
You're right. It's backwards.
You're a victim. And see, that's what I realized that day. He thought I was nuts. What I said. I said, I realized that I've been a victim. I know it hadn't happened, but I feel as if I've been raped. Okay? I said, not physically, but as if I've been raped and everything I had has been taken from me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I was just trying to describe how I feel. See, the bad thing is that lady did that treatment to me and sent me out in the world. She didn't realize that I had some heavy traumas. And she did this treatment to me, sent me out in the world, and I didn't have any support. And what they did was put me in a nut house.
Oh, my God.
And I was getting treatment.
All right, so we need
I've been going for treatment for years, and I would have periods where I would have difficulty dealing with the harassment, the things I saw in the fire department, and the lack of support from my family, and sometimes my friends, too. Because people didn't understand what I was going through, what I was saying. The people I felt closest to, and this is what's so weird, once I left the fire department, even the people that were harassing me, I felt closer to them than I did the people around me. Why? Because they knew what it was like to be in my shoes.
Yeah.
My family doesn't. And see, everybody that does this kind of work, police officers, people in hospitals, they don't tell everything.
No.
But ideally, they have some friends that they can talk to. But this rest comes from not being able to express yourself, how your feelings are. You're just supposed to suck it up when somebody dies. It's a mistake, and we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
Now, if you make a mistake, you contributed to that person's death, you have to accept that, right?
Yeah, but
You'll never make that mistake again, though.
That's still heavy. This is what the military goes through. You're right. Anybody, paramedics, firefighters,
You're
nurses.
responsible for that person's life, okay?
Yeah.
Now this is the one that really kills me. Sometimes you're just a witness, okay? You get there, there's not a damn thing you can do. They're dead in the doorknob.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And you have to remember, there's other people that were influenced by it.
Yeah.
And those were the people that really bothered me. You know, the mother that was crying. That's what bothered, because there was nothing we could do. And then you're just there for the living. Much like when a funeral.
Yeah.
You know, a funeral is not so much for the person that died as the people that are living. Deal with the changes that go through with that person.
And if you were in a leadership position, I can see how you would feel extremely responsible.
Well, you have to control the situation, and one of the things that I always did was take care of those people.
Yeah.
And I can tell you some stories, you know. There's this one lady, sticks in my mind. Her son was mentally retarded or mentally deficient, and he was in his mid-20s. And I'd seen them around the neighborhood. They'd lived in this area for a long time. And they had a fire, and it was in the kitchen. And the way that they had done it was a duplex house, and the way that they had done it, they had taken the duplex part out and put a set of stairs up, which, as the fire started, went directly up those stairs and went into his room. Now, everybody got out, and he must have just freaked out and didn't get out.
Oh, God.
And what he did was just laid. He was sitting next to the bed, close to the window.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Like the bed was against the wall, and he was sitting next to the single bed, and probably a foot or so from the window, sitting position with his hands over the top of his head.
Oh, my God.
Now, when I got there was nobody there. Okay, I was the first one on the scene, and I was the district chief. And two of the brothers were trying to get back in the house, and they were putting ladders on, trying to get in and everything. Now, look, if there was anybody in there, they were dead when I got there. I had to get them out. And here's this lady, you know, my son. And I had to go fight the fire, too. And I consoled her and left her with someone. And I developed a technique that I could do this very quickly in a minute or two. Size up what was going on. There's a crowd of people. Put her with somebody to take care of her. Tell them that we're doing the best we can.
Yeah.
And then she asked me, is my son going to live? And you don't want to lie. What you're doing is breaking it to him. And it's a very kind thing to do. Because she sees what's happened. She knows. And I always touch somebody when I do that. You know, I hold on their hand or their arm. And I say, man, we're doing everything we possibly can. But the fire is located where he is.
Yeah.
And it does not look good. And what you're doing is you're planting the seed before somebody comes and tells her he's dead. That's very important to a person's psyche. You know, that was probably some of the best work I ever did, was helping people that, you know, while we had a crisis going on, helping them mentally to absorb what was going on.
Yeah.
And so most of the time, these people wouldn't be freaking out at all if they were thinking of losing everything they had in life, you know.
When someone is committed and they're manic, bipolar, you gave some really good advice about how families can best help someone in that state.
I'm sure it's got to be very scary. It's like what my family did. I know my mother had to be hard for her to sign that.
Yeah.
My sister, maybe not so hard. Because we used to fight a lot. No, I don't really mean that. In their hearts, they thought they were doing the right thing. But they ruined my reputation. Okay?
Yeah.
We want to say that these things don't matter. They do.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, you're right.
There's a stigma that goes with it. And then the thing that was even worse than that, then they still never believed me about my treatment when I did tell them about it. So I didn't want them in my treatment because it kept interfering in it. They were questioning the professionals and questioning the patient or the patient's treatment. Now look, it's my life. I got to have some control. What I told them before this even happened, I said, you really can't do anything and shouldn't do anything unless I'm going to kill myself or hurt somebody else or I'm running down the street naked. And the problem is, you see this person different. It's the same person. They just got something wrong. Something that's really, really bothering them, and it's kind of blown their mind. Hopefully they'll come back very soon. But they need to be able to process, and it has to be safe. Now, once you commit somebody, you take away their safety, and you alienate them, okay? You isolate them. Who do they trust now? Especially if it's a family member and your best friend and your ex-wife. Now who do I trust? You see, I lost my inner circle, and most people do. In life, you have yourself, just so we can get this visual, you have yourself here, so you're like a little dot right here on a piece of paper, okay?
Yeah.
And there's a circle, small circle outside there. That's the true circle of people that you trust. Very small circle.
Right.
Your family members may not even be in that circle.
Right.
And outside that, you have another support system, which may be your family members. Outside that, work people. Outside that, people that do services for you. That inner circle protects you. These circles protect you from the outside world. Now, when you take away that inner circle and the person has no one to go to trust, what have you done? You also betrayed them. Now, how are they going to deal with this? They're in a manic state, and I say the reason that I've survived this was the infinite command system, because I was trained to problem solve. I think that's the main reason I've been able to do this and explain it.
Okay.
Because the years of being in command and being in command of the scene or planning and organizing, which was my best thing, that I could do, got me through my mental problems.
Right,
okay?
right.
Because I had a method to go about solving the problem. And from working that system all these years, it was just naturally I was able to do that. I still can. And I could do it in my manic stage because I've been doing it a little bit anyway at work.
Right,
see?
right.
So I've been coming in and out of post-traumatic stress. It would get better for a while, and then it would get worse. And it would get better for a while, and it would get worse. And that's the reason that I say bipolar. They're diagnosing bipolar, but they're not looking at the big picture. They're not looking at what the person's been exposed to, the kind of person that they are. When you get into psychoanalysis, they start talking about education and some of these other things that are factors. Education, experience, and that kind of stuff is definitely a factor when you're trying to diagnose what somebody's going through and what they're trying to say. I'll say the same kind of things. That's why these doctors and therapists pick up on it, because it's amazing. You can be from almost any walk of life, and sometimes you'll use exactly the same words when you're in that kind of condition.
Tell some of those words, tell some of those phrases if you know any.
Well, mine was, they're sucking me dry. They're sucking me dry. Being used. I kept telling them I feel traumatized. That's why I couldn't believe, because I'm using a technical medical term, and they still didn't get post-traumatic stress. And so what do you think's wrong with you? I just feel traumatized. There are some things that are bothering me, and I can't put them in the right place. That's what it is when we lose it. We're just not putting it in quite the right place.
Is there some kind of a group where people can go like weekly and talk about whatever's going on confidentially with each other? Is there anything like that?
Most of the departments, they're really supposed to have a post-traumatic stress program.
Yeah, I would think so.
Most departments don't do it. And in the fire department, I tried to do it 2 or 3 times. They'd say, okay, you go ahead and do it, and then you didn't get any support. So the administration has to support it too, because people feel like they don't want to talk about stuff, that you're not supposed to have a problem. Some people would not even say that they had a problem with it. But if you had people that would come in after an incident, and ideally within 72 hours of any major incident, you should get debriefed. Anything major, shooting, something where a kid gets killed, and it could be anything.
Right.
If the crew was traumatized by it, they should get some debriefing, which is post-traumatic stress counseling.
Right.
And ideally everybody sits there and talks about it, but you need some trained people there, and they have to be people that you trust. You're not going to go blab to everybody else in the fire department. Oh, so-and-so's got a problem with this, and blah, blah, blah. You really need a psychiatrist to do it, too, and that was the other problem. It was hard to get psychiatrists that would participate and be available whenever we needed them. Because, see, that can happen anytime. It can happen on the next run.
Right.
It can happen, they come to work, and they're messed up.
How bad? I mean, it seems to me there would be a lot of firefighters that are running around with PTSD.
There are a whole lot of them. And see, once they're in that environment in the fire department, that you tend to be able to group with some people that may be able to help. Other people that have PTSD will be with a group of people that they're able to talk to, and maybe ideally they've even got a few friends, like for rookie school or men from work. Now, once you isolate them out of that fire department, if they don't have a way of dealing with it, they're going to have problems when they quit the fire department. Because you took away the people that they can even talk to about it. Even if you're not talking about it, people that understand, you can be with them and they know. You don't have to say anything. You can just say, they'd ask you, because they're your friends. They're people you work with. You spend 24 hours with them and they can read you.
Right.
And so what's wrong? That run we had last week, that really still bothers me. They might talk to you or whatever. You've told somebody. See? You're not just keeping it to yourself. People are isolated, okay? Everybody's supposed to be so strong all the time. Then professionals tell you to ask for help. And when you ask for help, what happens? You don't get the help you need. You're isolated. They're scared shitless of you. They always think you're violent just because you're talking, or you're screaming, okay?
Yeah.
The reason you're talking and screaming is because otherwise you would be beating the shit out of somebody. You see, you got to get it out somehow, don't you? Scared, okay?
Yeah.
And you've got this stuff in, they're asking me questions, they bombard you with things, they don't take their time. I just don't think they interview the people right. They don't find out what their home life is like, which has got a lot to do with it. Several of the people that I was, in the institution with, all that was wrong with them was somebody in their family very close to them that died. One guy had lost his father, and another girl had lost her father.
Yeah.
And they were walking around, they had been drugged up, but I could tell, especially the one girl, that's all that was wrong with her. Her daddy was everything to her. And then when she was having a hard time dealing with it, her family just committed her.
Helping somebody who's manic, like you don't know really what to do for them, but you had some real helpful advice.
The first thing is, you got to make them feel safe, okay? Because they're scared. They know something's wrong, but they're scared.
Okay.
So the first thing is to try and make them safe. Go grabbing somebody or anything and telling them, well, you got to go to the nut house, The main thing you want to do is make them comfortable and let them do what they're doing, even if it seems weird to you, as long as they're not hurting themselves.
Yeah.
Fix them something to eat. Try and get them to go to sleep. Yes, they will. But if they're in that manic state, they're not really going to want to. Some people drink, and they're like, oh, don't drink, okay? Well, what are you going to do? You're trying to calm down. Dying from, alcohol poisoning or something. You got to be realistic, but,
right.
If they're just having a few beers and they're not doing anything and they're riding and they're sitting in their room or whatever, they let them work it out. You want to get them some help, but you have to be calmed down and you have to be willing to do it.
Right.
And the best way is to get them to check themselves because, see, then they're asking for help.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's nobody's hurting themselves.
Yeah.
Okay? For a long time. Committing someone is a very serious thing to do. It cannot be taken away once it's done. That's my only cautionary thing. People don't know what to do. Well, part of it is just listening and trying to get the person calm. It's disrupting your whole life. See, that's part of why people don't want to do it, because they know it's going to disrupt their life for a while. Yeah.
Yeah. What, listening and hearing something they don't want to hear.
Dealing with this, and they don't want to see a sick person, okay?
Yeah, I know.
They don't want to do it. They don't want to do it. at how many people now, when somebody gets a chronic illness, there's one person taking care of them, the rest of the family never comes over, okay? But people just avoid it like it's not happening.
Yeah. Wow, so all these vets coming back, it sounds like it is a recipe for disaster because they don't have any of their buddies around to talk to, and their family is expecting, the same person to come back that left. All the things that
they're isolated. They've got that Wounded Warriors program.
Yeah.
Which that sounds like that's doing really well too, because these Wounded Warriors they are not the only ones that need support. Their family does too.
Yeah.
Because their whole life has changed, and they need to be with other people that have had problems because they'll give you strength to push through, all the obstacles you're going to have to build a life after it's changed so dramatically.
Could you talk about what it's like to be committed? Like what happens when you're in? Because I think most people don't have a clue.
It's scary because you don't know what's going to happen to you, and all your powers can take them away.
Okay.
And the automatic assumption is that if you've been committed, you need to be here. Okay?
Right,
There's something really, really wrong that your family has taken that action, or whoever's done it, to put you in there. Now, it's really supposed to be 3 days when you go in for observation, whether it's a police officer picks you up or you check yourself in.
Okay.
3 days. And then usually you can get out. When you're committed, at least in the state of Alabama, it's a minimum of 3 weeks. That's another thing to look at. You're putting that person in a place that they cannot get out of for 3 weeks. Okay, even if they're better. If they snapped at it the next darn day, they still got to stay the rest of the time. So it's very scary. These state institutions, this was the other problem. I had good insurance, but I had to go to a state institution. Oh my God, those places. The chairs got poopy all over. It's nasty. And you've got people in there that nobody wants, okay? And they're come in there in a revolving door.
Wow.
You know a lot of these people because their families don't want them. And so what they do is farm them off every now and then so they can get a break. They just want the money from the person.
What do you mean?
Because the majority of these people are disabled. They're living with these people, and they may even have power of attorney over them where they can't get away.
So you're saying they want the money, they want their money, but they don't want to deal with them.
And part of the problem for the person is environment, okay? Now, what do they tell you when you go in for rehab, okay, for drug addiction or alcoholism or anything, okay? They tell you your environment's important, right? Do not go back to the same environment you were in, right? Why? Because those people drink and do drugs or whatever. You're going to get back in the same pattern.
Yeah.
But what do they do when you have a mental illness or you've got a condition? They're not the patient. They have no idea what's going on.
Right.
They just got to be supportive, all they got to do.
Right.
You know?
Wow.
And definitely don't stick your nose in this because you want to make sure that person gets good treatment. You're not a doctor. If I hadn't had the wherewithal to do this is how people wind up homeless. I had to pull out all the stops too financially. Fortunately, I'm recouping from that now. But I mean, you have to have some money with all the legal things you get into. I had to stay in hotels to get away from people. It's very difficult to function when you've got everyone on you. There's no one to turn to. Establish another group of people to help you, and hopefully that's medical professionals, but that takes a while to get that.
That's the part that is amazing, is because it does take, you've got supposedly someone who's in crisis, yet the way the system works is they let you out after you've been committed and no one's really checking on you. You've got an appointment. If you don't show up for it, what happens?
And that's what I was going to tell you too about drug addiction. The quote that I heard, and this was years ago, this is probably 20 years ago, that only 16% of the people who go in for treatment actually get anything out of it and change.
I've been in therapy, and I know if you go for yourself, you're gonna try to listen, but it's painful to go to therapy. But if you go for someone else, like your husband saying you better go or I'm gonna leave you, well, yeah, they might show up, but they're not gonna participate.
Well, they're gonna bullshit the psychiatric psychiatrists trying bullshit to psychiatrists and therapists because don't think they really believe that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Because most people do not tell the truth. Now, see, this is what's so stupid. You're going there, you're paying somebody to help you do this, and then you lie to them. Why? You know, it's just like going to the doctor and not telling them because you smoke. You know, lying about smoking. Well, you better tell them you smoke.
So you're saying that to help get stabilized, it's like you need to have therapy and you need some medication is probably warranted. Is that what you're saying?
Probably, because see, bipolar means extremes on either end.
Okay.
What they're worried about is not so much the mania. They're worried about the crash afterwards and somebody killing themselves or doing something to hurt somebody else.
Okay.
That's what they're worried about. And remember, the whole world is worried about being sued. Yeah, standard operating procedures for everything that you do, okay, when you're in the police department or fire department or whatever.
Yeah.
What they've done is change the way that they operate now. They used to, one or two officers would show up and they'd talk to somebody and they'd get it straightened out and then they may call for some backup. But now, depending on how they get the call, especially if they got it, there's somebody psychotic in the backyard.
Right.
They show up with 4 officers and they don't want to stay there long and they're fixing to take you and they're going to be rough with you too.
Yeah.
Because they treat everybody like that. They're so afraid of being hit or being sued, or if they leave you there and they get a call back, they'll get in trouble.
That they take the extreme action every time.
Yeah, and they're going to take you, okay?
Wow.
You're either going to jail or you're going to the hospital to be checked out, and that's what they're doing now. Now, see, when you do that, you put somebody in a cycle. Now they've got to get out of the hospital. They've got hospital bills. You take them to jail. They've got to bail themselves out. It's a bullshit charge. They charge you with something like disorderly conduct.
Yeah.
It just means you smarted off to the officer. Okay? And that's just because they want to do it. They don't want to deal with the problem. The problem is they've got somebody in front of them that's traumatized and got a problem. Wouldn't it be better to get them to a safe place than to arrest them or stick them in place where all they're going to do is shoot you up? That's all they do. You guys, you just lay there. I mean, my back was so sore from doing that because I wouldn't take the mood stabilizers because I know I'm allergic to it. So they mix up some other concoction that's got mood stabilizers and shoot you up with that anyway.
You're basically in prison and you're not even getting any help.
They'll handcuff you to the bed. Let you in there, and if you need something, you don't get it. Because the nurses and stuff don't even want to deal with it. In fact, they stand on the other side of the wall and make fun of you. Now, this is how callous people become. And if you've ever worked in an ER, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're making fun of the patients. Okay? Part of it is their stress relief because they're dealing with what they're dealing with.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
But that's the worst thing you can do to somebody that's having some kind of mental problem is to make fun of them like that. And they're the healthcare providers and mocking you from the other side.
Unbelievable.
They're callous now, honey.
That's disturbing.
You know, they're callous. A lot of this is these healthcare professionals, they need debriefing too. They need to be desensitized. These police officers need to be put in the same chair that they strap somebody in to control them.
Yeah, they do.
They need to have other people strap them down so they know what it's like. These people did not even know how to do this stuff, okay, because I've been trained to do it. Whenever you put a strap on somebody, you always put 2 fingers between you and their skin so that they can move a little bit. They still can't get their hand out. They still can't move. But you put 2 fingers in there. Why? Because the strap doesn't need to be hurting them. You're trying to restrict them from hurting themselves. You're not trying to hurt them more. You're not trying to stress them more. And you talk to them. You tell them what you're doing, just like you do when you're in medical. You don't just grab the patients. You tell them, I'm so-and-so. You know, can I take a look at you? You ask for permission. People just grab up. You know, you're in jail. They don't even treat you like a person. Just grab you like a piece of meat.
That makes me sick to my stomach.
It's a cattle call, okay?
Unbelievable.
And jail is terrible because they're so insensitive too. See, they're beating the shit out of people, yelling at people all day. They need some de-stressing themselves because what they're doing is they're escalating the situation instead of de-escalating the situation.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what's happening with the police department. You show up with 4 cops and they got a taser gun. They just showed up and pointed at you. Okay, you just escalated the situation. You did not control the situation. Now that person is really scared.
Yeah.
Walked up there and talked to him. You probably could have gotten him to do everything you wanted. You just said, look, you're going to have to go in. I know you're upset. And see, I've done this before, honey. I've never arrested one person in 26 years. I ran out in a field. I didn't have a gun. Went in the projects and everywhere. You talk to people. Most of the time, you talk somebody down. There was a couple times I thought I did off more than I could chew, but I never had a gun.
That's the old school where you came up, and they just don't. There's a different philosophy now. Would you agree? In training officers and
I think it's creating a society of people that are fingerprinted and mugshotted and been run through the system and treated like a criminal, and most of them didn't do much at all.
Yeah.
They made a mistake. Now, is that the reason to ruin somebody's life?
No.
You know, because you're not just ruining their life, you're ruining the other people around them, too.
Yeah.
You're digging them a hole that they may not be able to get out of. Most people don't have the resources I did. They don't have the education. They don't have the training. They don't have the wherewithal. Okay? And I'm a very strong person. And let me tell you, I probably couldn't have made it if it wasn't for all that. You got everybody against you, and they take all your money. If you have nobody to help you with anything, and you're all alone, and you're sick, and you're not getting the help you need, you know, that's why people wind up the way they do. And then they just simply give up money. People are trapped in their situation simply because they can't do anything about it.
What advice do you have for somebody who has bipolar to help themselves not let it get to the extreme point, all the bad things that can happen? What advice do you have for somebody?
You have to take your medicine. If you're bipolar, you have to take your medicine. And for that matter, if you're working with a psychiatrist and getting treatment and they put you on your medicine, you need to take it. If it doesn't work for you, you'll get off of it eventually. But if you're not following the treatment plan set out for you, you either need to find another doctor or follow that treatment plan. Because you're messing things up. They can't regulate how it's working for you if you're not taking it. And when they see you, if you say you've been taking it, well, they're going to go, it doesn't seem to be working. Probably have to give you some more of that. You're thwarting the whole purpose. Now, if you don't want to take it, then you need to talk to them about it. It makes me feel like this or that. Could we try something else? And see, there's all different kinds of bipolar. I think bipolar is used as a diagnosis, and not everybody's bipolar. There's actually a chemical imbalance. Some people have thought that it can be treated with massive doses of minerals. There are people that are bipolar. Now, I believe what I had was post-traumatic stress.
But they labeled it bipolar.
Okay, and that's what I'm treated for now. I'm treated for depression.
Okay.
I take 20 milligrams of Lexapro, which is just an antidepressant. Tries to keep you in the 3 to 5 range, so you're not too up, you're not too down.
Right.
But it's not. It works differently than some of the other antidepressants like Zoloft, Paxil, and some of the others. It works a little bit differently. It's a serum uptake inhibitor. There are a large range of drugs, and the other thing is people, just because they're allergic to those drugs that they give you now, does not mean that you won't be allergic to the older drugs, because your older drugs like lithium, midol, I think is what it was called. Anyway, there are several other older drugs that they used to use. That's an alternative if you do need some kind of medication for bipolar. So you've got to get the diagnosis and the therapy, and then it's up to you to put the work in.
Bipolar means extremes to one end or the other. Is that correct?
Yes. They used to call it manic depressive. Now they call it bipolar. What they've done now is they're seeing this behavior in people, and because of the behavior, in order to give them a diagnosis, they're diagnosing them bipolar. It's generally the manic behavior or the depressive behavior that they're showing.
Right.
If somebody tries to commit suicide, they might think they're bipolar and then the depression side.
Right.
But if somebody's yelling and screaming and, can't communicate very well, they may be in the manic stage.
Okay.
And basically, that's just to get a place to start from. The problem is they may never get out of that diagnosis. See, it may take them a long time. It took a while for this doctor to see it. I knew I had to follow the treatment. You see, you have to follow it through. I've been on antidepressants, and all they did was make me go to sleep. Paxil and all that kind of stuff. I've been through that, too.
Yeah.
Now, you have to find what works for you, and you have to find a therapist and a psychiatrist to work for you, too. If their first therapist you have may not be somebody you feel comfortable talking with, well, to get the help that you need, and you have to keep pushing for it. Now remember, the psychiatrist, you don't have to particularly like the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist is giving you medication, diagnosis and medication. Now most of the time, the psychiatrist did not agree with the therapist in my case. Okay? They had me diagnosed as bipolar, and I'd asked the therapist, I said, with everything here, do you really think I'm bipolar? It could get calm too easily.
The psychotherapist delves in deeper in talking to you, so I can see where, a psychiatrist doesn't see you as often as your psychotherapist. So they do know more.
No, it's a therapist. And that too, a complete psychiatric evaluation.
Okay.
You want to have something scary, have that done. Okay? I cried through a lot of it. The thing was, afterwards, when I went back to it, I saw the truth in it. People are they're afraid of the pain that you're going to feel, but it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. If you address it, it's going to be painful, but you're going to feel much better afterwards.
Right.
Okay?
Right. You take the power away.
Living like that. Okay?
Yeah.
Your whole life living like that. Would you rather live your whole life like that, suffering like that, or do something about it? And that means not being afraid to face your fears. Jungian psychology, I did want to talk about that at some time too, because Freud and Jung, J-U-N-G, are very important when you really want to get down to how the mind works. Jung was one of Freud's interns. They split. Jung believed that you had to have religion. Man had to have religion, but to come outside himself and realize he didn't have control over everything. And to be able to be human, imperfect. So he believed in that. That was part of their ideological thing. And the other thing that Jung believed in was dreams. That the bridging the gap between the conscious and unconscious mind can cure problems. Now, somebody else I want you to look at, her name is Francine Shapiro. She is the one that invented the DMSR treatment. Now, what they did, the military says that when they do that, and that's how they're treating people now, they do it where they take a pencil in front of you and you follow it back and forth. And apparently in the military, if you're unable to do that, they won't treat you. They'll wait till you're calmer. The lady that did it to me did it by closing my eyes and tapping on my knees alternately, talking to me. Shapiro says it doesn't matter which way you do it as long as you get it done. The military has a different way of doing it. They actually put people in situations, a place in Atlanta, apparently, that they actually put people in the Humvee again and run them through what happened.
Wow.
Yeah, and they have a psychologist with them.
Okay.
And they walk them through the event. And they even put smells in there and noise and stuff like that. What they're doing is reprogramming them. The idea is to reprogram the mind. She's the one that started it, and she probably has a connection with Jungian psychology because she's using REM sleep.
Okay.
See?
Yeah.
As you sleep and dream, it corrects things.
Well, your mind is more open. You're open to receiving information. Yeah.
And he says the better that you can connect those two, then you have a whole psyche. Your psyche is complete and you're a balanced person.
Right. Well, but you're saying that there's some value in that therapy, but it needs to be tweaked a little, because when they do that to you, you re-experience the event again, and then you need to be in a controlled environment.
Yeah, you're traumatized. You're traumatized again, you see. And the idea is to relive the trauma and not have to relive it again. Just do flashbacks and stuff like that. Reliving the incident again. It feels just like it did. You can see everything and smell everything or whatever. It may even be the smell that initiated the response.
I know, that's scary. Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Now what you're doing is experiencing that again, and hopefully you'll come out the other side, and it won't be as traumatic anymore when you think of it. Something happened.
Right.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. You know, it's not like you experience the whole thing again. That's what PTSD is. You're going back to the traumas that you had before and reliving them, see?
So you're saying there's
enough of them building up, you know. It just takes one thing to set you off, and then you're actually reliving several other traumas again.
I see, because it keeps building. I hear what you're saying. So you're saying there's obviously, it seems like there's value there, but they put these people through this scenario, but then they're not really watched. They don't have a safety net environment when they leave that trauma event. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I think that's happening with the military people too. I ran into a guy at a Braves game